Hello everybody, it's time for a new book. Yes, once again I'm choosing a book that I have taught because it's a book I know well. I don't know how sustainable this plan is going to be, but Lord knows I'm going to try. So this is a book that I've taught a few years running. I like it a lot because for the assessments that our students have to do, it's got a lot in it. There's a lot that they can use for it, and there's a lot of things that they can take from it and kind of do different stuff. So anyway, the book that we are doing is Kite Runner. Oh, sorry, I do not have, that's awful. That's a very glaring cover. I do not have my Dead Tree edition with me. It is at work. Oh well. But the Kite Runner, if you're not familiar with it, it is a fairly recent book. It's a 21st century book. It kind of caught the world by storm. It was very popular. It was made into a movie, which I have not yet seen, because as is so often the case with movies made from good books, I'm a little worried that it's not going to hold up, that they're not really going to get the point quite as well. But nevertheless, we're not doing movies here, we're doing books. So I want to talk about this book. There's a few things that I want to talk about when I talk about the Kite Runner. The basic plot behind it is our narrator, this guy Amir, gets a phone call from an old family friend that he has to go back to Afghanistan. And this kind of brings up a whole lot of memories. So we flash back to his childhood, to his time with his best friend Hassan, when they messed around as kids and were little scamps, and Hassan was his father's servant's son. So Hassan and his father were part of the servant class, the Hazara, whereas Amir and his dad, Baba, were of the Pashtun, who were the more sort of dominant social class or ethnic class, division at the time in Kabul. And so, yeah, a lot of it is that they were about a couple little scamps. They were having a great time until they attracted the attention of Asef, the local bully who had a real hard-on for Hitler. And one thing leads to another, and Asef ends up raping Hassan, and Amir, seeing what's happening to his best friend, runs away. Because what he wants is to impress his father, and to do this, he has got this kite that he's caught, and Hassan is his kite runner, from which the title comes, the one who catches the kites after they've been cut out of the sky. So Amir ends up blaming himself for what happened to Hassan and trying to forget what happened. Hassan doesn't understand why Amir is upset with him, and eventually they end up just sort of going their own ways. And Amir and his father move to America. They move to California, have a nice life. Amir becomes a writer. His father dies, and eventually Amir gets this phone call, hey, you got to come back to Afghanistan. And then it returns. He goes back to Afghanistan. He learns that, number one, Hassan is actually his half-brother, because his father was the father. And number two, Hassan had a son who is still alive. Hassan himself is dead. He was killed when the Taliban came back into power. But his son is still alive. And so this family friend, Rahim Khan, says, this is your chance to make up for what happened. So you got to go find Hassan's son, Sorab. Amir goes through it. He is very, very badly injured in the attempt to rescue Sorab. He tries to get Sorab to come back to the United States. That almost really doesn't work. But in the end, it all works out, in a sense. It's not a happy ending, per se, but a hopeful ending. We'll call it that. So there's a lot going on in this book. I wanted to talk definitely about the major characters. I want to talk about Amir and Hassan and Asef and Baba, and maybe a bit about Rahim Khan and Sorab and some of the other minor characters. They're really very well written. They're very interesting and distinct. If a little bit, in some cases, a little kind of cartoonishly good or evil, right? Hassan is perfectly good. There is nothing bad about Hassan ever. When it's described, his birth is described, the narrator says he came out smiling. Whereas Asef is cartoonishly evil. He is a terrible, terrible person. As a child, he loves Hitler. As an adult, he becomes a member of the Taliban. And this is not so much a matter, well, it is a matter of characterization, of course, but I'm interested in how that more reflects Amir, the writer of this story, the storyteller, and how he filters memory and how he remembers Hassan as perfectly good and Amir as irredeemably evil for reasons. So we'll get to that. I would definitely want to talk about that. I want to talk about, how all of this story is filtered through a somewhat unreliable narrator who is feeling very, very guilty about what he did not do when Hassan was assaulted. I want to talk about definitely the themes and the symbols, because I'm an English teacher. Themes and symbols, that's what we do. Guilt and shame. This is all about guilt and shame. How do you deal with guilt? How do you deal with knowing that you've done something that allowed someone else to get hurt? In the case of Hassan, There is the kite itself from the title, which is, sort of in Kabul at the time, kite flying and kite fighting are a great tradition, and it is Amir as the kite flyer and Hassan as the kite runner kind of really symbolizes their bond in a lot of ways, and the kite itself becomes a symbol between the two of them. There are the motif of scars and injuries throughout the book. People are getting injured. Sometimes scars just happen. Hassan has a hair lip, a cleft lip that is sewed up when he's a boy. And other points, people get injured through violence or other means. So scars and injuries are really interesting. And of course, we can talk about the internal scars that Amir bears, again, from his torment. And it'll be really interesting to think about and to talk at some point about how Amir is terribly affected by what happened to Hassan, but Hassan seems to kind of come to grips with, I guess, what happened to him. And there's a whole thing about that. So we can talk about scars, both physical and emotional and mental, when we get to that. I definitely want to talk about this as a redemption quest, because that's really what it is. The whole book is basically Amir trying to redeem himself for what he did and what he didn't do. He did do some terrible things. Amir, as my students have discovered every time we read this book, Amir may be the narrator. He is not a very likable kid, especially as a child. He's not a likable child. He's very, very privileged. He's very, very, he expects the world. He's not a good kid. But the latter half of the book is him trying to redeem himself from the child he was into maybe a better adult, an adult who deserves to, to be a good person again, as Rahim Khan puts it. And of course, there's a whole thing about father and son relationships. There's a major set of themes in there. There's multiple sets of fathers and sons. There are fathers and sons who are fathers and sons. There are fathers and sons who are not fathers and sons. It's a lot of that. There are very few women in this book. We may get to that as well. Who are the women? Who are the mothers in this book? We've got Hassan's mother, who disappears right after he's born and then reappears fairly late in the game. We've got Amir's mother, who dies when he is born. We've got Amir's wife and her mom. And I think that's almost it. That's almost like maybe 4 women in the whole book. So we can talk about them. Definitely want to talk about sort of the plot structure of this, because again, it starts with with a framing device. It starts with Amir getting this phone call from Rahim Khan that says, "You have to come back to Afghanistan. There is a way to be good again." Hello, Archie. Archie is my producer. He's making sure I'm staying on target. And why it starts there. I always ask whenever I see a book that starts with sort of a flash forward, or starts in the present and flashes back to the past, I always ask myself, why, right? Why was that necessary? Why did we have to do that? Why not just begin at the beginning, and when you get to the end, stop? However, many authors don't do that. And so it's worth asking, thank you, it's worth asking why they've chosen to do that. And I think that part of the book is worth examining. I want to talk about how it's a very much, I kind of like the structure of the book overall. It's very much like a 3-act structure, right? The first part is his childhood. The second part is the quest for Sohrab. And the third part is sort of trying to bring Hassan's son back to America and trying to kind of really make up for everything that had happened. I want to talk certainly about the reception and significance of this work, how it was received, especially considering it is a post 9/11 book by an Afghani American author. And as my American viewers may know, that was a tricky time to be an Afghani American right around September 11th. So I'm interested to do a little bit of research and see how this was received when it came out. I know it's really popular, and I know a lot of people, a lot of teachers like to teach this in high school English classes because, like I said, there's a ton of stuff to it. But I would be interested to see how it is thought of in other, maybe at the time versus how it is thought of now. So I think there is a lot to talk about with this book. I think there's many things we can do with this book. And again, it is definitely worth reading, I have to say. So we're going to do what we can. I'm looking forward to talking about it with you. If you have read The Kite Runner, if you like it, if you want to talk about it, jump in the comments, come talk to me, and we'll exchange ideas, we'll exchange opinions. And I look forward to seeing what that looks like. So thank you all very much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.